Hello, I'm Lou Brown and you're watching AnewZ. Let's take a look at today's top stories. More countries recognise a Palestinian state at the UN annual session. Russia is under pressure at the UN Security Council over accusations of airspace violations. And Uzbekistan signs a new $8 billion deal with Boeing. Now, Palestine remains at the center of global attention. As the United Nations General Assembly opened yesterday, world leaders turned their focus to the issue of Palestinian statehood. In a significant move, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Andorra, Monaco, and Malta have officially recognized the state of Palestine.
The leaders of 6 countries have moved to recognize Palestinian statehood at a high-level summit ahead of the annual United Nations General Assembly meeting in New York. Alongside France, which co-convened the meeting with Saudi Arabia on Monday in New York, Andorra, Belgium, Luxembourg, Malta and Monaco said they were recognizing a Palestinian state, defying the US and Israel.
Le temps est venu. C'est pourquoi
time has come. This is why, loyal to my country's historic commitment to the Middle East, for peace among Israeli people and Palestinian people, I declare that France recognizes today the state of Palestine.
Que la France reconnaît aujourd'hui l'État de Palestine.
Out a strong political and diplomatic signal to the world today by joining the group of countries that announces the recognition of the state of Palestine in the margin of this high-level week of the United Nations General Assembly.
Today we wish to reaffirm our unwavering support to Israel's existence, and we also wish to recognize Palestine as a state under international law.
As of today, Luxembourg formally recognizes the state of Palestine.
Leaders from Australia, Canada, Portugal and the United Kingdom had formally made the move to recognize Palestine a day earlier and also spoke at Monday's meeting. With more than 80% of the international community now recognizing the state of Palestine, diplomatic pressure has ramped up on Israel. However, recognizing Palestinian statehood is a milestone that could boost Palestinian morale, but unlikely to change much on the ground. And Israel said such moves will undermine the prospects of a peaceful end to the conflict.
Looking elsewhere in the US, President Donald Trump is set to meet with leaders and officials from several Muslim-majority nations on Tuesday. The White House said the talks will include representatives from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Indonesia and Pakistan. It's reported that they'll be discussing the ongoing situation in Gaza on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Axios reports that Trump will outline a peace plan for the Strip, including Israel's withdrawal and post-war governance without Hamas. The US also seeks Arab and Muslim support for troops and funding aid, the transition and reconstruction. Moving to Europe, tens of thousands of people across Italy protested on Monday, closing schools, blocking roads and halting port activity in a protest against Israel's offensive in Gaza. In Milan, clashes broke out between protesters and police. Authorities reported that there were more than 10 arrests and dozens of injured officers. Similar disruptions occurred in Naples and Bologna, while dock workers across the country blocked ports to protest against armed transfers to Israel. The demonstrations come as the Italian government rejects calls to recognize Palestinian statehood, unlike several other Western countries that backed the move at the UN on Monday. Now, tensions between NATO and Russia are escalating, with Western countries warning Moscow that future airspace violations will be met with force. At the United Nations Security Council, they accused Russia of deliberate provocations, while Moscow dismissed the claims as fabricated.
NATO allies have accused Russia of repeated violations of alliance airspace at an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council on Monday, warning that such incidents risk a direct confrontation. Estonia, Poland and Romania reported incursions in recent weeks, including Russian fighter jets entering Estonian skies for 12 minutes, drones shot down over Poland and a drone detected in Romania. Western officials said the pattern suggested Moscow was probing NATO's readiness. Russia, however, rejected the claims as baseless hysteria. Estonia presented radar evidence to the Council, insisting that 3 armed Russian jets penetrated 10 kilometers into Estonian territory.
And let me show you the screenshot from our most modern radar screenshot. So you can see here as well, the red line is a violation of Estonian territory and sovereignty. You can see it very clearly. This is a fact.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski issued a blunt warning.
I have only one request to the Russian government. If another missile or aircraft enters our space without permission, deliberately or by mistake, and gets shot down and the wreckage falls on NATO territory, please don't come here to whine about it. You have been warned.
The European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, said the repeated airspace breaches could not be dismissed as accidental. She argued that the pattern showed Moscow was deliberately testing Europe's borders and undermining regional security. Russia denied any wrongdoing, insisting that the planes stayed over international waters.
Thus, our former European partners, if you want to get hysterical, to ferment and to continue to levy baseless accusations, go right ahead. But do that without our participation. We do not intend to participate in this theatre of absurdity.
With NATO consultations scheduled for Tuesday, the latest confrontations underline growing fears that Moscow's war in Ukraine could spill further across Europe's borders.
Now, Estonia's defence minister said the country is ready to host British nuclear-capable F-35 jets after Russian airspace violations triggered NATO Article 4 talks. British F-35s and Typhoons have already rotated through Estonia and Poland under NATO missions, though officials in London note there may be no strategic need to base nuclear-capable jets so close to Russia. Military sources warn such a move could raise risks rather than strengthen deterrence. NATO leaders are expected to issue a joint declaration soon. To Ukraine now, where at least 1 person has been killed and 3 others injured after a series of Russian strikes on the Odessa region. Officials say the strikes hit civilian infrastructure and damaged several facilities. Ballistic missiles also struck southwestern Ukraine, leaving 1 dead and several injured. Authorities report the attacks ignited fires in 5 market kiosks, which firefighters quickly brought under control. Remaining on the conflict, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has met with US Special Presidential Envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg. Zelensky said their meeting focused on developing cooperation between Ukraine and the United States, including agreements on drones and on the procurement of American weapons that Ukraine has proposed to Washington. He also briefed Kellogg on the counter-offensive operation near Dobrapilla and Pokrovsk. Now we dial back the clock. It's been 3 years since Moscow staged so-called referendums in 4 occupied regions of Ukraine. Votes denounced as a sham by Kyiv and the West. Within days, Vladimir Putin signed the illegal annexation into law, a move still recognized only by North Korea. As thousands of Russians showed up for a pro-government rally under Z symbols, with soldiers dancing and Kremlin-approved singers performing under the "We're Not Leaving Our Own" banner. Moscow launched so-called referendums in 4 occupied regions of Ukraine and across Russia to ask whether Ukrainian territory, more precisely 15% of it, should become a part of the Russian Federation. The vote started on September 23rd and went on for 4 days. Kyiv and Western nations pledged not to recognize the results of the votes they branded a sham. Many saw the poll as a rerun of a similar process by which Crimea was illegally annexed by Putin in 2014 with a claimed 97% support. The hastily organized vote, announced just 3 days before it started, predictably resulted in the yes votes winning by a huge margin. According to the Russian-controlled voting committees, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson residents voted to join Russia, with the yes vote getting between 87 and 98%. On September the 30th, the same day that saw at least 30 civilians killed and almost 100 wounded in what Kyiv said was a cynical Russian missile strike on a convoy of civilian cars in Zaporizhia, over in the Kremlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin was joined by Moscow-installed officials of the four regions to sign the illegal annexation of Ukrainian territory into law, a move recognized only by North Korea. Staying in Europe, flights across Scandinavia were thrown into chaos overnight after drone sightings forced the closure of Copenhagen and Oslo airports. Copenhagen Airport, the busiest in the Nordic region, was closed for nearly 4 hours on Monday after large drones were spotted nearby. Around 50 flights were diverted. In Oslo, airspace was shut for more than 3 hours from midnight, also after a drone observation, before reopening early Tuesday. Police in Denmark and Norway are investigating whether the incidents are linked. Both airports warn passengers to expect delays and cancellations. Looking to football's most prestigious and valued award, French star Ousmane Dembélé claimed the 2025 Ballon d'Or after a stellar season with Paris Saint-Germain, as fans celebrated across Paris. The Ballon d'Or, organised by France Football, was presented on Monday at Paris Théâtre de Châtelet. Dembélé, who helped PSG win the UEFA Champions League, Ligue 1 and the French Cup last season, claimed the top honour. Fans across Paris took to the streets to celebrate, cheering and chanting in support of the French forward. Welcome back to AnewZ. Now, France has formally recognized a Palestinian state, with President Emmanuel Macron telling the UN that, quote, the time for peace has come, and urging an end to the war in Gaza. He stressed that France would only open an embassy once all hostages held by Hamas were freed and a ceasefire had been agreed. France's move follows similar recognition from the UK, Canada, Australia and Portugal, with more European states expected to follow. But the US, Germany and Italy skipped a Paris summit on a two-state solution hosted by France and Saudi Arabia. Israel has also reacted by strongly opposing the recognitions, warning it would reward Hamas following the 7th of October attack. Prime Minister Netanyahu insisted there would be no Palestinian state west of the Jordan River. UN Chief Antonio Guterres, Saudi Arabia and the EU all reiterated that a two-state solution is the only path to peace, with Brussels announcing new financial aid for Gaza's reconstruction. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas addressed the UN by video link after the US revoked his visa, condemning Hamas's attack, but urging unity until under the Palestinian Authority. Meanwhile, pro-Palestinian protests took place across Europe, reflecting rising international pressure. Joining me now to unpack the events is Pascal Mas, geopolitical analyst calling from Paris, France. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your invitation.
Pascal, I want to start with how significant is France's recognition of a Palestinian state, another major European country and a major country in the world?
Well, this is simultaneously it's late, and this is not the perfect moment to do so. Why should I say it's late? The recognition of a Palestinian state, the name, should have been done in the 1947, after the vote of the United Nations, after sharing the former British protectorate into a Jewish and an Arab state. It was written like this and voted like this in 1947. So all countries, including the non-European countries, should have made pressure upon the two identity to do so. But, well, nowadays, the situation is quite different. And the President Macron made by himself the decision of recognizing the country of Palestine, regardless of the parliament and regardless of the situation. So, for sure, it is legal and it is obvious that Palestinians should have that. But the problem is that one part of the territory, I mean Gaza territory, is under the control of the Hamas organization, which cannot be considered as a respectable state or power especially after the Hamas displayed on the 7th of October to Israeli people. So that was not the right time to do so. But of course, the final decision should be this, to have different states with own powers on the Arab side, on the Israelite. But the problem is more or less a question of calendar, not the question of the basic points that make this situation terrible.
Thank you for those insights. Now, focusing on the countries like with the US, Germany and Italy holding back, how divided is the West on Palestinian statehood?
Well, so in each country there are different situations because some are more in supporting the Palestinian and in France, for instance, because I'm speaking from Paris, that's even different to the other countries because the Palestinian problem is now under the control of the ultra-left party. And it is regardless of the real needs and the real hopes of the Palestinian people, but only for political reasons. That's quite different in the neighboring countries. You mentioned Germany and Italy. That's completely different. But it's obvious that this Palestinian question is making a big crisis and very violent riots in many countries because of it. That's quite new. But the basic points of the crisis are not alike in all European countries. And for instance, there are no riots in Monaco, nor in Malta, nor Luxembourg, and in Australia, quite somewhat. But the situation is quite different. It's in the European countries. That's completely different from one to one.
And bringing it back to today's top story, could Donald Trump's upcoming speech at the UN shift momentum one way or another? What are we expecting, and what might your reaction be to this?
Well, so now the voice of France, especially when it is displayed by Macron, is not heard anymore. Well, so he made a good speech yesterday, but it was involving himself. Even the country is not following him. But of course, this is a step to the I hope so, to the peace process. So, well, let's imagine that this speech is a wish of going on a quieter situation for both people, Israeli and Palestinians.
And Macron has conditioned opening a Palestinian assembly on a ceasefire and hostage release. Does that undermine or reinforce his recognition? Does it show how far they've got to go to get full recognition beyond the symbolism that some might say it is?
That should be the case, but Macron made this decision himself. As you could hear in French, he said, "I decided, I do so, I want this." But this is not the way the France is leading usually. And so opening a Palestinian, a French embassy on the Palestinian state, that should be in Ramallah, obviously, is another question of disruption with the state of Israel. And here in France, in Europe, this is the main Jewish population of Europe is living in France. And it makes domestic problems, domestic crisis, domestic violence and riots because of this. And for this reason, Macron made some declaration, but that are only for the domestic field, because next year we'll have elections and we have no government at the time for the time being. So all these declarations are supposed to be in the favor of a peace process, but really it's only for the domestic French domestic field. This is not very fine from here.
One of the main talking points here is the EU's new Palestine donor group making promising funds for Gaza's reconstruction. Is this political theatre? Is this tangible? How much money could this involve? Like you say, domestically, France has issues as well. How much money could be coming out of the French economy to fund a reconstruction plan?
The French economy is completely disrupted, and this is one of the main problems nowadays, is the economic crisis and social crisis. A lot of money has been spent, and we don't know for what, to Ukraine, and there is not even €1 available for helping new countries. The situation, the economic situation of France is terrible. And for this reason, Macron can make some declaration, but they won't be found behind. This is only for theatre.
I just want to take you back to the earlier point on conditional about Hamas no longer being in governance in Gaza. How difficult is that going to be to exclude Hamas from the conversation and to bring in an authority that both the West will recognize and respect and work with?
Yeah, you're right. Hamas is very powerful in the city and in the territory of Gaza, and it is difficult. It is really difficult to try to make something without Hamas. But this should be a discussion of diplomats. This hasn't to be made in the street and with the guns. This, as usual, you can't make peace with your friends. This is always with your enemy. So the main power to have discussion with Hamas is first of all Israel, maybe backed by other countries, but for the target of developing peace process, and according to this, to go to a mutual peace between Palestinians, either the one from Gaza and the one from Jordania, Cisjordania, and with Israel. This is the only target is this.
And I want to finish just
Hamas.
If I may, Pascal, we are running out of time, but I want to finish on a final question. The UN General Assembly hosted in New York, in the US, but Donald Trump being one of the significant leaders who opposes this Palestinian statehood recognition. How much is the US influential in these kind of decisions now? Are they being cut out of the dialogue in the Middle East?
Well, Donald Trump is somebody that we have never seen before at the head of the United States. I must say that he's a businessman, and he declared that the US will not accept a Palestinian state, but simultaneously is having meeting with the most populated Muslim countries. And so I guess that he's making a deal with all these countries. I mentioned Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Pakistan, and so, in order to make quieter the situation, but not on political declaration, on efficiency of the commercial diplomacy, as we should say. This is not understandable by European people at the European government, I should say. European government at that time, they are all in political words. No action in order, because this, if Donald Trump makes a good deal with the Muslim and Arabic countries, these will invest in rebuilding Gaza and maybe to make something new. Once Donald Trump said that Gaza might be like Las Vegas or something like that. But
I do apologise, Pascal. We have unfortunately run out of time. But I do want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. It is greatly appreciated, and I hope to have a chat with you again soon. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. See you. Thank you very much to you.
Welcome back to AnewZ. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Turning to another angle of the UN General Assembly, at a sidelines meeting in New York, Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa vowed that his country would never be divided into factions. It's the first time in nearly 6 decades a Syrian leader has attended the UN General Assembly, and he is expected to deliver his first address on Tuesday. On Monday, he touched on several key issues, from urging the United States to lift sanctions to rejecting any division of Syria and calling for inclusive agreements among all factions. Sharaa called on all sides to seize the chance for peace and unity, warning that division would endanger the region.
We have made it clear that we will never accept the division of Syria in factions, because this would lead to trouble and risk against neighbouring countries such as Iraq. Therefore, we have to reach peaceful solutions. We have to endorse the document related to the implementation of the convention, or the agreement of all the factions, including those supported by Turkey and those supported by Iran. We have to seize the opportunity in order to reorganize Syria, because this will benefit everybody, all factions, including the Kurds.
Now, the United States has imposed strict limits on the Iranian delegation attending the UN General Assembly in New York, curbing their movement and banning access to wholesale stores and luxury goods. Iran's foreign ministry did not comment on the US State Department restrictions. Tommy Pigott, the deputy spokesperson for the US State Department, said in a statement that the move aims to, quote, maximize pressure on Iran's clerical establishment, accusing it of allowing authorities to enjoy luxury shopping abroad while ordinary Iranians face, quote, poverty, failing infrastructure and shortages of water and electricity. Pigott added that US Secretary of State Marco Rubio ordered the Iranian delegations confined to routes between their hotel and the UN headquarters for official business only. Turning to Central Asia, Kazakhstan President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has been holding multiple meetings as part of his visit to the UN in New York. His meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky drew international attention. Zelensky said they discussed in details the efforts of Kyiv, Washington and Europe to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. Tokayev also met with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. During the meeting, a memorandum was signed to promote regional sustainability goals for Central Asia and Afghanistan. Also during the visit, the US and Kazakhstan finalized the largest locomotive agreement in history, a $4.2 billion deal that underscores American industrial strength. Now to a major business deal. Uzbekistan Airways has placed its largest ever order, purchasing up to 22 Boeing 787 Dreamliners in an $8 billion deal. US President Donald Trump thanked President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, saying the agreement would create more than 35,000 jobs in the United States. The deal is a major boost for Boeing, aiming to strengthen ties between the two countries, and highlights Uzbekistan's efforts to modernize its aviation fleet and expand international partnerships. The second day of the Azerbaijan International Investment Forum in Baku is underway, promising a host of innovative discussions and opportunities. From panel debates to the signing ceremony, a range of significant events are lined up for attendees today. Our Nadia Gayan is at the event with more.
It's day 2 of the Azerbaijan International Investment Forum in Baku, and if yesterday was anything to go by, today will be just as great. There's going to be double the amount of panel discussions, but this time looking at strategic investment and finance, medical excellence, industrial development and agriculture, plus a signing ceremony. There'll also be a special interview with Karabakh football manager Gurban Gobanov. Today promises to be jam-packed with innovative discussions and a sharing of ideas for future initiatives. I'll be here to bring you the latest updates. I'm Nadia Jani for AnewZ.
Focusing on regional diplomacy, Azerbaijani Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov and Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan have held a meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly session in New York, the Azerbaijan Foreign Ministry said. Building on the results of the peace summit held in Washington last month, the ministers exchanged views on possible next steps to advance the peace agenda. The ministers agreed to continue their dialogue. Now, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has hit back at former officials Levon Ter-Petrosyan, Serge Sargsyan and Robert Koch-Aryan over claims that he dragged Armenia into war. On his Facebook page, Pashinyan questioned why their children were not sent to the front lines in 2018 and highlighted the involvement of young Armenian soldiers. He also criticized Ter-Petrosyan over a 2008 incident involving Kitrich Nersisyan, saying he owes an apology and challenged the former officials to a public debate. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian received an Azerbaijani delegation led by Deputy Prime Minister Shahin Mustafayev, who is on a visit to the country. The meeting emphasized that relations between Azerbaijan and Iran are developing successfully, and both sides stressed the importance of further enhancing cooperation between the countries. Shahin Mustafayev also met with Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ali Larijani. Turkey has officially introduced its first armed unmanned surface vessel, Sankar, marking a new milestone in the country's defense technology. Developed by Havsalan and Yonka Technical Shipyard, the vessel has completed all acceptance tests and is now ready to enter service, strengthening Turkey's maritime security.
Turkey's first armed unmanned surface vessel, Sancar, has completed acceptance testing and will enter service to protect the nation's maritime borders. Defense contractor Havelsan announced that Sancar successfully passed its firing tests last week with a 12.7mm remote-controlled weapon system, clearing the final step before operational deployment. Havelsan's CEO Mehmet Akif Nacar described Sancar as the company's first product in its unmanned maritime vehicle family, fully integrated with the Turkish Navy's advanced combat management system. He emphasized that the platform incorporates 5 indigenous Havelsan systems and has already attracted considerable international interest.
We are intensively continuing our business development activities abroad. We definitely demonstrate Sankar to delegations in Istanbul, and they see it in the field. When we go to exhibitions, we explain it, and we have contacts. Some countries are seriously interested.
Sancar offers a 360-degree situational awareness through electronic cameras, artificial intelligence-enabled obstacle avoidance, and friend or foe identification. The vessel's software is being developed in line with NATO interoperability standards, opening the door for potential use among alliance members. The autonomous naval platform was most recently showcased at Technofest Istanbul after emerging from sea trials and will soon be delivered to its assigned unit to begin protecting Turkey's maritime borders.
Back to AnewZ. As the high-level week of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly gets underway in New York, much attention is turning to diplomacy on the sidelines. Amongst the bilateral encounters, Azerbaijani Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov met with his Armenian counterpart Ararat Mirzoyan to discuss the peace agenda between their respective countries. While such meetings could be seen as routine given the recent intensification of contacts, including talks on connectivity, the question remains whether each encounter can bring more definable results. Both President Ilham Aliyev and Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan are also in New York and will address the General Assembly later this week. This comes against the backdrop of Azerbaijani Deputy Prime Minister Shahin Mustafayev's meeting with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian in Tehran, where regional connectivity was reportedly high on the agenda. And notably, Prime Minister Pashinyan has in recent days sought to absolve his own record while openly criticizing his predecessors, seen by some analysts as part of his peacemaking effort with Azerbaijan. To unpack these developments, I am joined now by political analyst Orkan Nabiev. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for hosting me.
Orkan, President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan are both in New York for the General Assembly, with Donald Trump as president of the host country. While I am not suggesting a repeat of the August 8th breakthrough, is there a possibility of a lower key but still consequential meeting between the leaders?
It's probably, yes, it's possible. The advancing the settlement of the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict and reinforcing the principles of the territorial integrity on the global stage remain the central. In the United Nations is a key platform to emphasize that Azerbaijan supports peace agreement and long-term stability in South Caucasus. So the same rhetoric from the Armenian side would be accepted. So both leaders can address to the whole world, saying that they are support the peace and the prosperity in the region. And also they can emphasize the meeting under the patronage of the President of the United States.
And beyond formal diplomacy, we've seen growing people-to-people contacts. For example, Murad Muradov, co-founder of the Topshabov Center, recently visited Yerevan to highlight positive Azerbaijani attitudes for peace. Do you see these exchanges as part of a broader effort, and how might they shape the process of interstate normalization?
It's a normal process that the first experts, then journalists, then the cultural celebrities visit each other, and they're showing that the peace process is continuing. And this is one of the formats of the conflict transformation to the peaceful settlement, the trust building process. And doing so, this kind of, how to say, steps will create the trust between two communities, two nations that's been in a very bloody war more than the 35 years.
Let's return to the political arena in Yerevan. Prime Minister Pashinyan has doubled down on his criticism of his predecessors. Do you view this as a pre-election move ahead of June 2026, or is it a way of reinforcing his peace agenda with Azerbaijan, or maybe both?
Everything what's happening in the 1 year in advance before the election is a process of the election process and the process of the election PR. So yes, it's the position of the Pashinyan is total eliminate the parliamentary opposition and kick out the Robert Kocharian and Serge Sargsyan, previous presidents and their parties, out of the political arena of Armenia, and to gain the consolidation from the Armenian citizens during the election, as well as you said, this is also the part of the peace process, conflict transformation, and the trust building inside the Armenian society. So Pashinyan, by these narratives, by these rhetorics, wants to do two things in one. As I said, first, to totally eliminate parliamentary opposition. Secondary, shows that he's the only leader that could bring peace to Armenia.
Staying with Pashinyan, he recently attributed one of his earlier mistakes, the one made in 2019, to the legacy of the Soviet Empire. What do you make of that rhetoric? Does it genuinely reflect the way Armenia frames its past in order to justify its present choices?
Pashinyan of 2019 is a total different person in the political point of view than now, because in the 2018-2019 he came as a populist leader. He came as a person who doesn't want to lose, and all his rhetorics was at that time very populistic. Even though that saying that Artsakh is Armenia is one of his biggest mistakes that he said. The second thing, that when he came to the power in 2018, he said that with Russia we will still keep the ties. So this is a political, inner politics change in Armenia, but not a geopolitics. And what the Pashinyan does now, his attitude, his behavior, and his narratives is totally different than it was before 2020.
We also saw Azerbaijani Deputy Prime Minister Shahin Mustafayev meet with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. Do you think Tehran is beginning to come with terms with the post-August 8th reality and the trip corridor?
Exactly, yes. The biggest concern of Iran that having the United States in the region, that Iran didn't want to have in their borders anything that reminds the United States after the 12 days war. As well as Iran always opposite opening the Zangezur corridor that we now call the TRIP. And the position of the Shahin Mustafayev is the economic background that he wants to show the Pezeshkian and the two Iranian elites, Iranian government, that no one gonna lose in the opening of the Zangezur corridor. So there should not be any political or military concerns regarding this corridor. It's what we will do. It's will be beneficiary for all the counterparts, all the stakeholders in the region, for Iran, for Armenia, for Azerbaijan, for Turkey, and for other interested groups that want to cooperate and collaborate instead of having the conflict.
I want to bring you back to a slightly earlier discussion where we had about Pashinyan. Now, Nikol Pashinyan recently made a Facebook statement challenging former President Levon Patrosyan, Robert Kocharin and Serge Sargsyan, including his claims about 18-year-old Armenian servicemen deployed beyond Armenia's recognized borders, election falsifications, and his call for a public debate. And what do these exchanges reveal about Armenia's current political climate and historical accountability?
To be honest, 18 years old Armenian servicemen were in Karabakh also during the Pashinyan's rules, after the 2018, during the 2019, 2020. And the Pashinyan was a person who said that we will continue till the end during the 44 days war. But now his rhetoric totally contrary rhetoric what he had during the 2019-2020. Now he wants to show to his society, as I said, that he's a monopolist of the peace in Armenia and totally eliminate all the forces that can be opposite to Pashinyan's and the Pashinyan civil contract party. And as I said, 1 year before the election is a pre-election process. Now he wants to show himself as a person only that can bring peace to Armenia, and he does it.
And I want to bring attention to the main line of this UN General Assembly, and these leaders being there, it would be amiss not to mention it. Obviously, the Israel-Palestine, Israel-Gaza conflict has been a hot topic as well, but Palestine's state recognition, could Armenia and Azerbaijan position themselves as a mediator for a ceasefire now that the recent events in Qatar, in Doha, could Azerbaijan position itself as the mediator? Could Armenia position itself as a mediator? What do you make of that?
I don't think so about regarding the Armenia, because Armenia has not such a good ties with Israel, but Azerbaijan can, if Azerbaijan will ask. Azerbaijan will never initiate such efforts to the conflicting side, as well as they didn't ask them. For example, Syria and Israel asked Azerbaijan to not a mediator, but to host the talks in Baku between Israel and Syria, and Azerbaijan gives the floor to them. As well as the Turkey and Israel, they asked for the being Azerbaijan for being a mediator and to host their talks, and Azerbaijan did it. And there was several rounds of the negotiations. But if neither Palestine nor Israel asked Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan would not do such initiatives, because there are many stakeholders around and interested parts around Israel and Palestinian conflict, and as well as Israel is not, to be honest, interested in the peaceful settlement of the Palestinian-Israel conflict. The position of Netanyahu is clear. He totally wants to annex Gaza, and the next step will be the West Bank.
And lastly, Azerbaijan has been many would say has been a staunch ally of Israel. How difficult might it be for Azerbaijan to balance that with other countries at this summit?
Azerbaijan always tries to keep the balance between the Islamic world, between the Arab League and Israel, And Azerbaijan always said that our relations with Israel are not against of any country. It's our personal, our economic and technological relations. And we don't have any kind of the political support of each other, because Azerbaijan, one of the first countries who recognized Palestinian independence, Palestinian statehood, as well as the Azerbaijan has a Palestinian embassy in Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan supported two-state solution, which is against Netanyahu's policies. But this never touched the bilateral relation between Israel and Azerbaijan. And considering this, if Israel are open to negotiate in Azerbaijan with Palestinian side, Azerbaijan can host both of them, both countries' leaders, and give them floor for negotiations. But to be honest, as well as the Hamas problem didn't solve in Gaza, because the Hamas, one of the biggest problems that Israel faced, and it may turn Israel to the beast against the Gaza people. And the secondary, Palestinians cannot.
Orkan, if I may, sorry, I do apologise, but we have run out of time. But I would love to have you again on soon to unpack more things of this nature. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for hosting me.
You're up to date with the world news for the hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to AnewZ.